Hello everyone, Catweazle here, welcome to the channel and welcome to something a little bit different. As you can see, I have a card game laid out. Now I'm not going to be doing a playthrough, but I am going to be doing a short showcase. Now the game in front of you is called 1565 Saint Elmo's Pay, and it is designed by Tristan Hall of Hall or Nothing Productions, a fellow Manchester lad. So as a bit of a favour, I'm doing this for him. In the interests of total clarity, he is giving me a playmat for doing this. So I'm getting a free playmat for actually showing this. But the game itself, that I have kickstarted it myself. I've paid for it with my own money. And the reason for that is I've got a couple of Tristan's games. I've got Gloom of Kilforth, which you'll have seen on the channel. And I've also got 1066 Tears to Many Mothers, which I haven't had a chance to play on the channel yet. But you will see it during this showcase because it's a very similar game to 1565 St Elmo's Pay. Let's just give you a bit of background on that. So 1565 St Elmo's Pay, Suleiman the Magnificent has got a 30,000 strong Ottoman army and he is invading Malta. So he's invaded Malta and the Knights of St John are currently on Malta and they're trying to defend the island, and they've got three fortified places that they're trying to defend. Saint Elmo itself, which is at the top there, Senglea, which is the second one here, and at the bottom is Birgu. So these are the three places that the Knights of St John are looking to defend from the Ottomans of Suleiman the Magnificent. Now Suleiman wants to take control of Malta and basically push the Knights of St John into the sea and take over the whole of the island. And that's the crux of the game, really. One player will play the Knights of St John, which are over here, you can tell by the Maltese cross on their shields, and the other player will be playing Mustafa Pasha. Now he's the leader of Suleiman's attack force, and he is over here on this. You can have them on either side, it doesn't matter. I've just put the Turks, the Ottomans to the right, and the Knights of St John to the left. The leader for the Knights of St John is Jean Parisot de Valette. So there you go, he's the Grand Master of the Order of Malta. And this is the basic setup you've got here, apart from the fact that when you do set it up, these face down cards wouldn't be here. I've just put these cards face down just so you can see how the battle map is set out. So you've got the Knights of St John over here, you've got the Ottomans over here, and they have a grid, a 3x3 grid where they can place cards, and simulate a 3x3 grid where the Ottomans can place cards here. So when you set up the game, these cards wouldn't actually be here. But now that you've seen them, you do know where you can place cards during the course of the game. So I'll pick these up and I'll pop them into the deck there, and I'll do the same for the Ottomans. So when you actually start the game, it will, as soon as I pick these cards up, talk amongst yourselves while I finish that off. Right, there you go. So it would actually look like this, but be aware that you've still got the grid around where you can actually place cards. So there you are. That is the setup of the game. Just go through a few other details regarding the setup here. We have those three frontiers. So St Elmo, Senglea and Birgu, which I've mentioned. And these are the places where the confrontations will be taking place. There are three of them. If you ever take two of these, then you have won the game. Similarly, if your leader gets enough damage for him to be killed, then you will lose the game. Yeah. The third way to lose the game is, as you can see, you've got a massive deck of cards here. You've both got a massive deck of cards. If you run out of cards then you will lose the game. So just to quickly go through the setup here, you've seen the battlefield and the frontiers laid out here. Up here you'll see two sideways decks of cards, one for the Knights of St John and one for the Ottomans. These are your objective cards. I'll go through them a little bit later on. This particular piece of cardboard here, this large piece of cardboard, very fetching piece of artwork on it. Just let you have a look. This is just the first player marker, and that will always go to the Ottomans. The Ottomans go first, so we'll pop that up there because the Ottomans are initiating the actual siege itself. So they've turned up, spoiling for a fight, so of course they get to go first. Now, as mentioned, you've got your decks up here, and you'll see some cards here that are face up. They're just there to indicate a discard pile. So as you go through your deck and use up cards, you'll put them into a discard pile. So that's there. And some other bits and pieces that are down here is you do get some summary cards here. They're double-sided, and you'll get a battle summary and you will get a game summary. So you'll get a few of those in with the actual game. You also get some lovely markers, lovely wooden markers, nice and thick in two colours. These red, I'm going to use red for the Maltese, and we're going to use the blue for the Ottomans here. Though, you know, about do with being green those rather than blue, because Ottomans are blue, the Ottomans are green, but at least you can tell the difference between the two. And we'll do those to, we'll use these to indicate things like damage. So for example, Jean Parisot de Valette, he may have 2 damage on him, so you just pop it on like that, so you know he's got 2 damage. Or you could use the blue ones. You know, you could just go, right, as the damage is coming from the Ottoman side, you could do it that way. Completely up to you, just so long as you know how much life he has got left. So there we go, and we've also got some other tokens. Now you get a lot more than these, and I do believe Tristan is looking at having -1s on the flip side. So +1 and -1, because they can go up or down these. Now these are might and zeal tokens, and you'll see these on the cards as well, the iconography. And might and zeal is what you use to actually win battles and complete objectives, and basically how you fight. So zeal, it's like you know, onward into the breach, dear friends, though it be filled with the bodies of our English dead. Now that's Agincourt, but and Henry V, but that's zeal for you. You know, getting your like forces going, getting them up for the fight. And might, well, might's quite easy. It's how tough you are and how well equipped you are for the actual fight. And the higher might, obviously, that you've got, then you're going to beat your opponent because they're not as mighty as you. Similarly, if you've got a high zeal, you know, you're more up for the fight than your opponent. The differences between the two are generally in like just some of the confrontations. It's just, for some of them, having a higher zeal is better, and for other confrontations, having the higher might is better. Might's normally, you know, your pitched battles. Zeal is things like in your objectives, for example, you may be you may have objectives where you're trying to round up more troops, for example. So having a greater zeal is better for that. So, but you'll see that as you play through the game. Okay, so we've done the basic setup here, and what I'll do is go through some elements of the gameplay. Okay, so gameplay. We'll go through gameplay by going through the different cards, and I'll explain what the different cards do and the different decks do as regards playing the game. So first of all, we'll look at objective cards. So we'll take the Knights of St John objectives. So here's one, and this is objective A. As you can see, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, all in alphabetical order, and G is actually the denouement of the game. It's the Great Siege of Malta, yeah? and this is always will be your final objective. There is a variant whereby you don't have to go A, B, C, D. You can just shuffle these up and, you know, just to mix it up a bit. But this will always be your final objective. And that will be the sort of, you know, climax of the game, is the actual Great Siege of Malta. But before you get there, you've obviously got to achieve other objectives. So let's look at these in a little bit of order. I won't go through them all, but we'll go through a couple just to show you how you will progress the game towards the actual Great Siege itself. So this is the first objective, and it's Turgut raids Gozo. Gozo's a small island off the coast of Malta, 1551. This objective is destroyed automatically. When destroyed, move on to the next objective. So essentially, if this is your first objective, you get rid of it straight away. Already, the Knights of St. John player moves on to Objective B, which we'll just go through in a minute. Now, on the iconography here, this is just telling you which objective it is. It's Objective A, but this scroll may go down a little. You'll see that in one of the next cards, I'm sure, and that it will give you some further iconography that I'll go through. At the bottom, you'll have a bit of italicized text. This is just flavor text. So, the Ottoman Empire clashes with Europe in a long series of conflicts. Seeking vengeance for his brother, Turgut completely depopulates Gozo, enslaving all 5,000 inhabitants. What a nice guy. So, there you go. As I say, if you're the Knight of St. John player, you get rid of this one immediately. So, you're already on Objective B. Now, this is Piali raids Jerba, 11th of May, 1560. And as you can see, we've already got additional icons here. This is because we don't automatically succeed at this objective. We're going to have to work for it. So on this objective, you've actually got to have more than 2 zeal. Yeah. So if on the board, you've got cards on the board, and when you add them up, they've got more than 2 zeal, you will start chipping away at this health counter here. If you get 6 health onto here, so say you had 4 zeal on the board, at the end of the round you would put 2 markers on here and you would have 4 less to get. As soon as you get 6, then we have a look here. So this is a battle, and it's zeal to win this battle. When destroyed, you may and that's this card. When the objective is destroyed, you may draw 1 card, then move to the next objective. And if you're playing a solo game, when destroyed, you just draw 1 card. Now, destroyed means like it's out of the game, yeah? Which is slightly different from discarded. Discarded goes to a discard pile, obviously, but destroyed means back out of the game. So let's say we've actually got through this. Over the course of a couple of rounds, we've got 6 tokens onto this card, and we just move on to the next one. I'll just do this one, and because it's a slightly different card. So this is Objective C, but this time it's might. Again, 2 might. So if we've got more than 2 might on the board, then we can start chipping away, and again it's 6. So we need 6 tokens on this card. And this one is Don Garcia reclaims Penon de Velay, or Veleth, or whatever. February 1564, again battle, but this time it's might, and when you destroy this card you may remove 1 damage from any unit or character and then move on to the next objective. Solo, when destroyed, you draw a card. Now this one, down here you may have characters and units. I'll go through the different types of cards shortly, but say you've got a character, for example, Jean Parisot de Velay, he's a character, yeah? Well, he's actually a leader, but if you see an individual, yeah, he'll have an individual's name, and he will be counted. He'll have down the side here his keyword will be character. Well, if they've got any damage on them, you can take it off. Similar a unit, for example, you may have Maltese peasants, and they may have a damage on them. Take damage off those. So this is how this card works. In solo, you just get an additional card. Again, we've got the italicized text, and all this is a bit of flavor text. Don Garcia de Toledo is appointed Captain General of the sea. That's pretty bold. He reclaims the fortified Corsair base at Pelon de Veleth. So there you are. So these you work your way through these in order to get to the Great Siege of Malta. So that is the idea of how to get to the actual climax of the game. Now, it doesn't matter if one player or the other gets there first. You don't have to get there together. The person who gets to the Great Siege first just gets a little bit of a head start, but by no means does it mean they've won. Because you can rush through these objectives, and at the same time you try to build up your forces. So the Knights of St John here, building their forces there, the Ottomans are building them over here. And you can whiz through all of these objectives and not have many cards. Whereas slow and steady wins the race. Say the Ottomans take a bit longer, but they may have, you know, better forces arrayed against the Knights of St John. So even though they turn up at the Great Siege later, they may be better prepared. So that's the risk and the reward you do with how quickly you go through your objectives. So speeding to the Great Siege doesn't always mean that you are going to win. But it does give you a slight advantage in that once you get there to the Great Siege of Malta, that's when these frontiers come into play. Really come into play, because as you can see, each frontier has its own value on it. Yeah. So once you put 8 tokens on here, Saint Elmo becomes yours. Similarly, the same for Senglea, which is 10, and it's 12 for Birgu. You can only start putting your tokens onto these frontiers when you are actually at the Great Siege of Malta. So if you get there a bit early, yeah, you can start trying to put your tokens on there. But as I say, if you turn up early and you haven't got really enough forces with you, you're going to struggle to actually put your tokens onto these. You know, you'll just be putting them on slowly. Then the bigger force arrives and then they easily catch up, go past you, and all they've got to do is take 2 of these frontiers. Once you take 2 out of the 3, the game is won. So there you go. Right, so that's how the objectives work. Obviously the Ottomans have their own objectives, and they will be trying to do the same thing. Okay, so that's the objectives. Next, we'll look at another set of cards. Okay, what should we look at now? Let's look at the cards themselves. We've looked at the objective cards, but let's have a look at the cards that we actually play during the game. So we've had a look at the Knights of St John objectives. We'll have a look at the Ottoman cards, just to let's mix it up a bit. The Ottomans are feeling a bit left out. So let's go through the different types of card you can get. So here we've got a tactic card. Now it's got a cost of 2. How do you play cards? How do you manage to get them from your hand onto the actual battle board itself? You do that by actually paying the cost of them. So its cost is 2. That's it here in the top left-hand corner in the red seal. It's got a number in it. And if you look to this side of the card, the right-hand side of the card of this particular one, which is a tactic, you'll see it's got 1 resource. So you get 1 resource here, but that resource kicks in when you tire the card, like that. Generally, you just discard a card for a resource. So any card, you can discard it, put it into your discard pile, and that will give you 1 resource. So if you discard 2 cards, you will get this card, and you can put it off to the side because this tactic is now in play. And by using this tactic, you can affect what happens on the board. We'll just read through it. You'll have the name of the card here, and you've got a bit of iconography here, a little quill, and it's thorough preparation. The keywords will go here, so like Ottoman, and obviously some cards that are played will affect specific keywords. And this is a response card. Now, a response can be played at any time. So generally you play most cards when it's your turn. But response cards you can play at any time, so you can interrupt the other player. The other player may play a card and you'll go, whoa, I'm going to play, or I'm going to tire my thorough preparation card in order to counteract what you are doing. So that's what a response card is. And this particular one, when a unit or character is dealt damage, prevent 1 of that damage. So if you've got a unit or character on the board and the Knights of St John have attacked him, put some damage on him, you can go, right, as a response, I'm tiring this card and we're going to prevent one of those damage. So that's an example of how a tactic works. So any other cards? We have a character. So here is a character. It is Pir Mehmet, who is an Ottoman. And he's got a bit more iconography. Look at the artwork, it's fantastic. Now, I've had a look through all these cards that Tristan kindly sent me. I think the artwork is pretty much done and dusted. It all looks pretty good. But remember, this is like a preview copy, so some things may change. And some of the iconography may change or, you know, be moved around on the card. But generally, this looks pretty much ready to go for me, and it looks absolutely fantastic. These cards are like obviously preview cards as well, so you'll get a bit better. Some of them are slightly off cut and stuff, so if you do see that, bear in mind that this is not the finished version. So anyway, let's go through the additional iconography. Remember the objective cards we were talking about? Here we start seeing things like 1 zeal there, it's got 1 might there, and it's 2 health. So if you manage to put 2 markers onto this guy, you can get him off the board. Yeah. So if he is, say, in the Birgu frontier down here, say we pay our 2 cost, pay our 2 resources, get him on the board. At the end of a turn, along with Mustafa Pasha here, you can start adding him up. So if your objective had a might of 2, we've got 3 here from Mustafa, and we've got +1 here from Pir. So that'd be 4. 4 against 2 means 2, and you would put 2 of these onto your objective. Once you got to the objective's limit, get rid of that objective, follow what says on the card, move on to the next one. So that's how that works. So he's a character, and he's also an Ottoman. When played, Swords Elite destroy 1 enemy inventory in this card's frontier. There's an example of these keywords. So you'd look at St John here. If they had an inventory card in one of these frontiers, well, you'd play it in the frontier that the inventory card was in on the opposite side, and then you would apply this and destroy that card. Remember, destroy is not discard. Would not go to the Knight of St John player's discard pile, it'd go out of the game. Yeah, so that's Piers, and as you can see, the man's an absolute nutcase, and that's why he goes around destroying inventory. So that's it. So pay the cost for him, put him out on the board, and obviously as part of your play, you would look to use a frontier that had inventory in it so you could get rid of it. Yeah, so that's an example of a character card. Here we have a unit. So this is a cost of 5, very expensive unit. It's got 1 zeal, 4 might, which is huge, but as you can see, it's, you know, it's blowing the hell out of Birgu there. So so that is why it's got such a huge might. It's 4. You need to get 4 hits on it to sort of get rid of this card. So Peale's patrol ships, Ottoman Navy. When played, recon. Look at the top of the 4 cards of your deck. Return them in any order. So you can look at the top 4 cards there and go, ah, right, which ones do I want coming up? So very strong card. Now, when you pay the cost for this and put it on against the frontier, for example, Birgu. Why have I put it there? Because it's the same artwork. So it'd go there, and again, what you're doing at the siege of at the actual siege of Saint Elmo, you know, the final objective, you would have 4 might there. You've got 4 might going against Birgu. Now, depending on what the Knight of St John player has got here, it's sort of like, how much might have you got on this side and zeal? How much might and zeal have you got on this side? And, you know, it's a seesaw. If you've got more might, then you start putting more damage on here. So as you can see, this would be a very strong card to have in a frontier. So that is an example of a unit card. Here we have an event card. Now these are like one-time use. These, an event card. So you use it, then gets discarded. So this is a cost of 2. Suleiman, not Suleiman, that's Mustafa Pasha. So the Shadow of Suleiman, though, Ottoman. Now it's a response card, so you can use it as a response. When you deal damage to a frontier, deal 2 extra damage to that frontier. Brilliant. So if you play a card, you know, if it comes to a situation in the game where you're putting damage on a frontier, you can, but remember, you can play this at any time. You just go, right, I'm going to play this card, discard it, and we're going to put 2 extra damage on. Or, as an action, in which case you won't get rid of it, sorry, as an action, in which case you have to play it on your turn. That's the response, when you can play it any time. But if you use it as an action, you've got to use it on your turn. Deal 1 damage to a frontier, so you can just deal the extra damage, discard the card. So that's an example of event. And here we have an attachment. What attachments do is they attach to cards that are already on the board. Yep. So let's read this one. It's cost of 1. And defend ditches and trenches, Ottoman. Attached to a frontier, your opponent cannot move cards into this frontier. So in this one, if you actually play this one and say we put it onto Saint Elmo, what that stops the Knight of St John player doing is putting any more units, characters or cards in here, in this frontier. Essentially, you've dug a load of ditches and trenches and you're stopping troop movement into that frontier. So again, very good card. There are ways, obviously, to get rid of these. So he will have, you know, countermeasures, but it just depends whether they're in his hand or not at the time, yeah? Or on the board at the time. Okay, so that is an example of an attachment. Some attachments will actually go onto your leader. Some will go onto a character, like, what's his face? Per Mehmet, and they will give you sort of additional bonuses when that happens. So that's an example of an attachment card. Right, so those are the types of card that you get and how you use them. As mentioned, what you'll do at the beginning of the game is you just get 4 cards to start with. So it'd look like this. You go 1, 2, 3, 4. Same for the Knight of St John player, but we'll just have a look at the Ottoman ones and see what we've got here. I haven't actually prepped this so we could get anything. So these are the cards we get. So this is a cost of 3 for Rumelian Adventurers, Ottoman Infantry. See, infantry keyword. Obviously, our peer, he won't affect this guy because they're on the same side, but if they're on opposite sides, he would. So again, this guy for 3, he's got 1 zeal, he's got 2 might, and he takes 2 hits. And he's relentless. Unless sacrificed, this card can be played from the top of the discard pile. So there you go. As part of the gameplay, you can sacrifice cards, but there's full rules on the BGG page and on the Kickstarter page. So if you go in, you can go through all the rules and see that. I won't have time to go through everything. I'm just giving you a general overview. And so he costs 3. We've got another that costs 2 here. No zeal from this guy. 2 might and 2 health. This is Spahis, Ottoman Cavalry, a unit. Cavalry, this card gains might +1 while in row 3. So if it was in row 3, which is Birgu down here, then that's when we'd use one of these tokens. We wouldn't use the zeal token, we'd use the +1 token. So while he was in row 3, he'd get that. So he'd actually have 3 might in row 3. Otherwise, he would just have 2. Yeah. And again, just the italicized flavour text down there. So we've got him. We've also got another unit, Ottoman Gunners, Ottoman Infantry. Cost of 0. Brilliant. You can just play this. Bang. Put him where you want. Yeah. So 0 zeal, +1 might, and he just takes 1 hit. So this is just your general grunt that you chuck out there. And again, Ottoman Infantry. When played, marksman deal 1 damage to 1 non-leader enemy. So you could play this guy. So say we played him there, and we had... Now, he's not going to hit Jean Parcio de Valette because he's a leader, but if we had another card in here behind this guy, he'd be able to attack. Yeah. Generally, and he's gunners, you see, so it's like gunnery. So yeah, so we've got him, and our final card that we drew, cost of 2, would be Mishandled Incendiary. This is an order of Malta. Action, deal 3 damage to 1 non-leader enemy. So because this is an event, again, this wouldn't go on here, but you would play it if you had the 2 to say, you know, you'd have a look at who was on the St John side and go, oh right, I can deal 3 damage to anybody but him. Yeah, so you have a look on there and go, you know what, I'm going to pay 2, I'm going to discard 2 other cards, I'm going to pay for this, and I'm going to blow up one of your units or one of your characters because like they cannot handle their own ordnance properly. So that is an example. On these we could play all of these cards if we wanted. Obviously the 0, that'd go out there, you know, doesn't cost anything, but we could even play this one that costs 3 by discarding all these 3. Discard all these 3, we could play the Rumelian Adventurers. So that's an example of cards in your hand and how you discard them to get the resources to play the card that you do want to put on the board, and then you'll place it on the board. When you place it on the board, it's got to go as near to the frontier as possible. So for example, we've got Suleiman here, so if we did play this card, we could put him on the frontier here, and he would go behind, we got not Suleiman, Mustafa Pasha, but if we put him in any other frontier, he'd have to go right at the front. Similarly, if you ever lose a card, so say we had 2 here, these 2 guys here, and this one disappeared, for whatever reason, this guy would have to move forward, and also any cards that were behind him, they would move up. So just a short little example of what happens at certain parts of gameplay there. Right, so we'll put those in the discard pile, and that's an example of the different types of card. Okay, what shall we go on to next? Okay, so we've gone through various types of card. We've gone through the frontier cards, the objective cards, and the general cards that you use in play. When you actually play the game, it's a series of rounds. The Ottoman player starts with the first player marker. He goes first, as mentioned, because he's initiating the siege. He's the attacker. And the defenders are the Knights of St John. When you do a turn, it's split into 4 phases. Don't always use every single phase. So sometimes it just depends how far along in the game you're in when some of the phases kick in. But those phases are preparation, deployment, frontier, and objective. Now, in the preparation phase, you will, first of all, you do a victory check. So first, probably won't kick in for a few rounds, but once you've really got into the game, you will have to do a victory check. So say we run out of cards. So first thing you do is go, oh, start of my turn, I've got no cards left, I have lost, because I've got no cards in my draw deck. So bye-bye. Basically, you have lost the game. If you do have cards, then you can draw them. So you will draw cards, and you draw 2 cards. Now, at the beginning, you draw 4, and you can have up to 6 in your hand. Yeah, so you draw 2 cards, and then you decide what you keep, what you play. So you will draw your cards. If you've got more than 6, then you've got to make a decision. You know, like, you know, you're going to play, say you're going to play one, you can play one, you can't always play one, sometimes you might have to pass. Then, in which case, you have to decide which 6 you're going to keep, because that is your hand limit. If you've got any of your cards that are on the board and they are tired, so you've used them, remember that that card that we saw, that Ottoman card we saw, whereby the tactic, where you could tire it, what you do here is start of a new round. It's obviously not tired anymore, so you can turn it the right way up. So once each player has drawn their 2 cards, whoever's got the first player marker will move on to the next phase, which is the deployment phase, which is basically paying the cost for card and putting them on the table, or paying the cost for a card and discarding them in the case of an event, or sacrificing cards. Sometimes there's some cards that you want to get rid of, and you can just discard them, so you can sacrifice cards, and you would do that during that particular deployment phase. You can also pass. Sometimes either you don't want to play because you want to wait and see what the other player is going to do, so you can pass, and sometimes there's nothing you can do. So you just have to pass anyway. So yeah, deployment phase, playing a card, putting it down is an example of that. You can execute an action. So one of the cards that's already down, remember, some of them will have a keyword action, and you can execute that action, yeah, and do what the card says you can do. And as mentioned, sacrificing a card or passing. Okay, so that is the deployment phase. Then you move into a frontier phase. Oh, just when you do an action on a card, you will tire it. Yeah, so you will tire a card when you do an action. So if you use, during the deployment phase, if you use any of the actions on your card, you will tire them. But beginning of the turn, preparation phase of the next turn, it'll come back. Yeah, assuming it doesn't get killed. Right, anyway, the frontier phase. Now, this is an example of a phase where you don't always actually move into it. It's got a few caveats around it. So you'll only do this phase if either player is actually at the siege of Malta. So if either player's got to objective G, then you'll do the frontier phase. And what you do then is, first of all, you'll do might combat. Now, I mentioned this very briefly when I was going through the cards, and in a might battle, you will sum up the cards that you've got against a particular frontier. Now, if you're at the siege of Malta and your opponent isn't, then you start putting tokens onto the frontier. You're there first. Depending what cards you've got, yeah, you will start putting might tokens onto here. You'll be using your might and saying you're unopposed because the other guy isn't here, you know, and say you had 2 might, then you'd whip that on there, and you'd be on your way to getting those 12 tokens on there to take Birgu. However, if you're both there, then it's conference 8, you both add your might up, yeah, and the one who's got the greatest might in the cards in that particular frontier will put the tokens onto the card. If you have no might, for example, if either side has no might, just 1 each goes on, yeah. But remember, that's just if you're both at the objective, which is the siege of Malta. If only the Knight of St. John was there, even though he had no might, he would put 1 on, yeah. Okay, I think that's right. I'll just check that, won't be a moment. Sorry, that's wrong. If you have no might and there's only you at the battle, then you don't. But if both of you are at the battle, or at the siege, then, and you both tie at 0, then you'll put 1 each on. Yeah, just means the game goes quicker. Yeah, when you're actually at the denouement. But if there's only one of you there and you don't have any might, then you don't put any on. But if there's 2 of you, you don't have any might, then you start putting 1 each on. Yeah, just to you know, get a bit of momentum into the game, because you only have 12. Yeah, so then the race is on for, oh, I've got to put some might into that particular frontier so I can, you know, I can start like building on the might that's already there, that's been sort of dribbling on. Okay, so after the might combat, exactly the same, but it's zeal combat. And again, you sum up the total amounts, and if you've got more, you start putting them on, the difference. Yeah, the difference goes on. So both might and zeal play a part in being able to take a frontier. Once you've got enough tokens of your colour, so 12 on Birgu, if you had 12 red, then it's won by the Knights of St. John. If you had 12 blue in this case, it's taken by the Ottomans. Now, if there's still a tie, then the player with the highest might total will claim it. If there's still a tie with might, then you move on to the zeal total battle total, yeah? Just to add it up. And if there's still a tie after that, then whoever was first player, in this case the Ottomans, would take that frontier. Let's say it's early in the game and we haven't got to the actual siege yet. We haven't got to the final phase, we haven't got to Saint Elmo's pay and the Great Siege of Malta. We are just chugging through our objectives, in which case we do the objective phase. If we're at the last objective, you don't need to do this because obviously you're doing the final battle, the final siege, so no need to look at your objectives up here because you're both at the final one. But if you're still trucking your way through your objectives, you will do the objective phase, and whoever's got the first player, they will make an attempt to destroy their topmost objective card. I've mentioned that before when I went through the objective cards itself. You will look at what you've got in play, and for example, if it's a might of 2 that's required, and you have a might of 4, you will get to put 2 tokens on your card. Add up the total number of tokens on your card, and if it's greater than or equal to what the requirement is, then you'll read the text and it will tell you what to do when you have achieved that. Generally, you might get a bit of a boon, and then you just move on to the next objective. One thing to remember is that those boons, there might be a few on a particular objective. You can only use one, so you can't use them all. You just pick one. So that's one to bear in mind there. If an objective card isn't destroyed, if you don't get enough of your tokens on it, then you don't take the tokens remain. Yeah, so it's just cumulative. So over a series of turns, you just generate enough damage onto that particular objective, and eventually you will destroy it and move on. Okay, one last thing to point out is if you ever get any modifiers on your card, on any of your cards, they can never be lower than 0. So if you end up with minus, you just move it up to 0. You'll never have, a minus modifier on any of your cards during the game. Just anything that goes below 0, you just change it to 0. So with the end of the objective phase, what happens then is you go into a new turn. So very quickly gone through that. As I say, haven't really got the time or opportunity to go through it at any great length. I do apologise to Tristan for that, but it gives you a good idea of the game, and you've seen some of the components. Now, as mentioned, these are preliminary components. They're not set in stone. They're still good. This is excellent stuff for preview. Brilliant stuff. Look at this. Look at the artwork there. Just amazing. And what will the game look like once you receive your Kickstarter? Well, that's why I've brought out an earlier Kickstarter. Now, this is the same type of game. As you can see, starts with a date in history and then has a little subtitle. So this is 1066 Tears to Many Mothers, which is based on the Battle of Hastings. A very similar game. And additionally, because it's a very similar game, you can actually mix and match these, so that's very important. You could have the Ottomans, for example, taking on the Normans or the Saxons. Similarly, the Saxons could take on the Knights of St. John. The very similar game, whereby we have frontiers here. In Tears to Many Mothers, you have wedges, but the gameplay is the same. Yeah, so you can mix and match these games, and they're fully compatible, so that is brilliant. The reason I'm showing you this, let's see what a Kickstarter copy looks like, what you will actually be seeing. So this is brilliant. It's lovely. Look at the box art. This is an example of what you'll be getting with Saint Elmo's pay. So there we go. That is the box even before I've opened it. Let's pop that on here. And come on, out you come. A nice tight fitting lid. There we go. So I've opened the box. I've knocked the camera And here is an example of the rule book that you'll get. As mentioned, you can see the rules online. They're on the Kickstarter, they're on Board Game Geek for 1565, St Elmo's Paybook. Here is an example of the rule book for 1066. As you can see, beautifully set out, beautiful artwork, full colour. I'll pop that in there. You will also get separate solo rules, and again, here's the separate solo rules for 1066. You will get them for St Elmo's Pay as well. Then, very similar, here are the tokens, but yeah, you get more of them, all put away. You'll get extra bags as well. They throw in a few extra bags, and again, you get these excellent tokens, and exactly the same as what I've just been showing you. And here you get all your cards, and they are these aren't placeholder cards. These are the real deal. So let's just show you what they look like. Much better quality than I've just been showing you, as you would expect from the actual finished game. Again, as you can see here, all the setup of the iconography is the same, and it's all easy to read. It's all well laid out, and it's absolutely fabulous. So put these back in here. Hopefully I will get a game of 1066 to the channel. I haven't had time yet, but there are some great yeah, if you actually want to see gameplay that will be very similar to 1565, Ricky Royal has done some playthroughs of 1066, as has Marcus J Play, so check those out. They are excellent. And but I did want to show you how absolutely beautiful this will be. Now these, you may have noticed these, I've just explained, these are off Gloom of Kilforth. As part of the Kickstarter, I did get some cards whereby they changed some cards in Gloom of Kilforth, updated them, errata cards, that sort of thing, and I got them with this. So there they are, and I think we've got, those are the wedge cards, I think. That's the backs of them. But as you can see, absolutely beautiful. A nice big box and beautifully presented. So that is what you will get with 1565 as well. In addition, what you will get, that's stuck to the bottom. So hang on while I rescue our leader, Jean-Pierre de Valette. And Senglea, put that back. Right, what else you can get is, they do have various add-ons, so you can actually get 1066 with the Kickstarter. It's one of the add-ons. Well worth it. Beautiful game. Oh, hang on, Touch of Evil's creeping in there. Don't want that. So there is an opportunity for you to get previous games by All or Nothing. Both Gloom of Kilforth and 1066 are excellent games. I cannot recommend them enough. And an example of another add-on that you'll get is something like this, which is an actual playmat. This one's for 1066, obviously, but as you can see, you get a magnificent playmat. And all of this setup that I've done here, you can put on a lovely playmat like this. This is for 1066. But they are doing one for 1565 St Elmo's Pay, and it will look as magnificent as this. Not only that, as you can see here, now with this there is an upgrade to the playmat in 1565. It will actually have stitched edges, so it'll be even better than this one, and this one's magnificent. So there's an example of another add-on that is available for 1565 St Elmo's Pay. Okay, so I think that's it for this showcase. I've rabbited on enough. Again, apologies I cannot do any gameplay, but I do have Touch of Evil over on the side, which is taking up a lot of my table space, I'm afraid. But what I've been able to do is, because A Touch of Evil is near the end and I'm getting ready for the showdown, I was able to sort of get some spare space. I was able to get rid of the other of the Echo Lake board and the Coast board, so I was able to set up a bit of 1565. If you want to get over to the Kickstarter and back it, please do. I think, like usual Kickstarters, you can just put a pound in, stick a pound in if you're unsure, and then you can always back out later, can't you? But I cannot, as far as gameplay, it's exactly the same as 1066, which is an excellent game. You can see those Ricky Royals playthrough, Marcus J play, so you can see how he plays there. The components are really good. It's easy to play, difficult to master, all that sort of stuff. It's fantastic, and I'm more than happy to do this showcase for this game, because I know it will be as good as 1066, the components will be as good as 1066, and as I say, I am getting paid a playmat for it, but the game itself I am buying with my own money, because I know it will be an excellent game. So if you can support Tristan and All or Nothing and get an excellent game, please do so. Pop along to the Kickstarter. I'm going to have to zoom now, because time is of the essence. Hours are running out, and it will soon be the time for... well, the Kickstarter will finish, so I've quickly got to edit everything and update it. Okay, so Saint Elmo's Pay, 1565 Saint Elmo's Pay on Kickstarter now. I'll put a link in the description for the actual Kickstarter if you want to go along and support it. Excellent game. Until next time, this is me, Catweazle, saying toodaloo.